Host of Kennedy on Fox News Network, Kennedy herself. Like that hot pink.
Yeah.
And in the center seat, Lawrence Jones, editor-in-chief of Campus Reform. He is outnumbered. Great to see you.
Thank you, ladies. A lot of news to get into.
Yeah, let's rock and roll, shall we? The Justice Department is pushing back on the lawsuit, saying the president's appointment is lawful and in line with actions taken by past presidents. Meanwhile, President Trump is in an exclusive interview with our own Chris Wallace, saying he will not get involved with the decision-making when it comes to oversight of the special counsel investigation, and that he was not aware of acting AG Whitaker's criticism of the Mueller probe. Watch it.
I did not know that. I did not know he took views on the Mueller investigation as such.
And there's no collusion.
Chris, I'll tell you what.
He says you can starve the investigation.
Right. What do you do when a person's right? There is no collusion.
If Whitaker decides in any way to limit or curtail the Mueller investigation, are you okay with that?
Look, it's going to be up to him. I think he's very well aware politically. I think he's astute politically. He's a very smart person. A very respected person. He's going to do what's right. I really believe he's going to do what's right.
But you won't overrule him if he decides to curtail.
I would not get involved. And all these people that say, I'm going to end the investigation, you know, they've been saying that now for how long has this witch hunt gone on?
The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, vowed to challenge Whitaker's appointment.
I think the appointment is unconstitutional. He's clearly a principal officer, and the fact that he is a temporary principal officer doesn't mean that that is any less subject to Senate confirmation. He needs to know that if he takes any action to curb what Mr. Mueller does, we're going to find out about it. We're going to expose it. And I would certainly call on my colleagues right now to avoid the constitutional crisis. Take action now. Speak out against this appointment.
The president responding this way in a tweet, misspelling Congressman Schiff's name. I won't actually say it, but you see it. Pointing out that while Whitaker not only was approved by the Senate, or has not been, neither was Bob Mueller, who was highly conflicted, unquote. Meanwhile, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, vowed to make a final report from Mueller's investigation to make it public.
The last election, what the public has said is that they want accountability and they want transparency. And they had paid for an investigation by one of our greatest public servants, Mr. Mueller, Special Counsel Mueller. And so I would do anything and everything in my power to have the findings presented to not only to the Congress, but to the people of the United States.
And the incoming chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, says he's not worried about Whitaker, but he would like to see a vote on a bill to protect the special counsel.
Jeff Flake says he's not going to support judges until we get a vote on the Mueller protection bill, which I wrote, by the way. Some people think it's unconstitutional. I feel good about it. So I think the best thing the Senate could do is just bring this bill to the floor. Having said all that, I don't see any indication at all that the Mueller probe is going to be interfered with by Mr. Whitaker or President Trump.
Wow, there's a lot going on there.
A lot to unpack. A couple things. First of all, it seems like the Democrats are trying to anticipate something. Just allow it to happen. If the president decides to fire him, then you guys can take action.
Well, what do you do with Senator Graham? Because he agrees. He helped write the legislation.
So let's get to that. Between Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake, that's not their job to do that. They're not over the executive branch. So for them to hold up judicial appointments to say, let's protect Bob Mueller, you don't run that branch of government. Now, if the president decides to fire him and they believe it's because of some type of corruption, then you can impeach the guy. But you don't get to just say, oh, let me get involved with the executive branch. You can provide oversight, but your job is not to decide who is protected or not. That's the president's authority. Agree with it or not.
Jessica?
I don't see what the big deal is. There's a lot of legislation that just makes people feel good, that gets passed all the time, and usually it's bipartisan. What does it hurt the president or the members of Congress or the Senate who are not interested in protecting Bob Mueller to just sign the thing if there's no worry that the president is going to be firing Bob Mueller? Also, Bob Mueller was confirmed by the Senate. That was wrong in the president's tweet for the first time in 2001.
I struggled reading it because
Also because it has, an oddly spelled expletive in it as well, which after the president talks about decorum, it's a pretty low blow then to go after a sitting congressman and use that kind of language.
But to be fair, though, it is the president's right. It's his authority.
Kirsten Gillibrand used that kind of language in a speech. Isn't that unbecoming of a United States senator?
And I said on air that I thought it was unbecoming, and I don't think people should be cursing. But I certainly don't think the president should be lecturing us about decorum and then going and doing something like that. If he wants to be taken seriously, you could spell the name correctly.
I want to make the point clear. I wasn't struggling over that word.
Yeah, we knew.
So, Kennedy, this is interesting to me, and I'm leaning on you to try to explain it. So, a lot of people are in disagreement over what the exact ruling should be here and how it pertains to the Constitution.
As far as Whitaker's appointment?
Yeah, and why it can't be temporary. Remember that day that we thought that he was going to quit? Jeff Sessions, we weren't sure if Rod Rosenstein was quitting too, and it kind of looked like people were going to quit that week. And so the conversation went to, well, if the president makes temporary appointments, and there wasn't any argument over it then, he's allowed to do that, and then you have the Senate confirmation on the permanent guy. When did the script flip?
I don't know, man. I mean, the whole thing is so... It's all about each side digging in, because Adam Schiff doesn't want Mueller impeded because he wants to make sure that there's an impeachment that comes out of it. And so his biggest fear is not that the federal government runs smoothly and effectively and the three branches keep each other in check. It's that he somehow jockeys for position and gets the advantage if Mueller does complete the investigation and launches some sort of either finding or an impeachment process is taken up by the House. That's one thing. So it's kind of hollow. I actually agree with Elijah Cummings. And whenever this report is finished, I think it should be made public. I think all of this stuff should be made public. Indeed. And Adam Schiff has been so guilty of abstracting things for his benefit and his party's benefit in order to increase his profile, just as Devin Nunes did on the right.
And he wants to launch his own investigation. And we remember for months now, they said, just protect Bob Mueller. Allow his investigation to go through. Now you want your own investigation. Why? Do you not have faith in
It'll
Mueller?
be interesting to see how Democrat voters really feel about that. I mean, they put more Democrats than Republicans in the House seats. Is this the droids that they were looking for? I want to talk to you about this part. Yep. So in Chris Wallace's sit down with the president yesterday, they went back and forth over the written answers by the president to Bob Mueller. Let's take a watch.
I'm preparing written answers. I'm the one that does the answer. Yes. Are they writing them out?
Yes.
Yeah. They're writing what I tell them to write.
Are they going to be submitted?
At some point very soon, yes. I've completed them.
Is that your final position, that there's going to be no sit-down interview and nothing written or in person on obstruction?
I would say probably. Probably. I mean, I can change my mind, but probably. I think we've wasted enough time on this witch hunt. And the answer is probably. We're finished.
Melissa?
He's so disciplined at branding. I mean, like, he gets witch hunt in every single time he talks about it. I mean, that is staying on message of what you want to do. To me, I was kind of surprised to hear that sentence, and I think that's the end of it. You know, I think I was surprised to hear they're done with the answers. They're ready to turn them in. Mm-hmm. That is that. So I don't know, to me, for the first time, and I don't think I've said this yet because I never believed the probe was ever coming to an end, but it's starting to feel like it might be the end, which would be amazing. I would also say for the Whitaker thing, I don't understand why it would be so easy just to say, okay, forget it, let's go to somebody else.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's
you
not
said this
worth
about Kavanaugh,
fighting
too.
Over the interim.
You said the same thing.
But then you signal weakness, that you're not up for the fight. Like, the Democrats are clearly going to fight over everything. They're going to find a reason to oppose him. So do you signal weakness, or do you surprise them by saying no? And then finally, on the decorum thing, I'm going to vomit on the next person on either side who says decorum, because no one in politics has any decorum any longer. You're on either side. When you get upset, everybody's outraged and screaming everywhere.
Oh, how dare you!
Everywhere.
But then people attack the president using such colorful, invective language.
No one's got decorum.
And then they're upset when the president starts something or when he finishes something, but people are so eager, whether it's Elizabeth Warren or Adam Schiff, to do the exact same thing. You know, Tom Perez and Christopher.
And everyone says they're just responding.
But it wasn't just Tom Perez. He was calling other people in the party to, like, let's
use curse words.
Let's get this in there.
Decorum's out the window. It's out the window. Let's just mark it dead.
Because you were one of the few people when the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings were going on, when you said before any of the other things came about. This was earlier right after he had been nominated by the president. You said, well, if he's going to be somebody that we get stuck on as a country,
just move on.
Move on. What is it? And then you doubled back and said, no, it's about the fight.
It's about the fight, and I guess this is the same thing, because he's like, I barely know this guy, but you can't just back down because everything's a fight right now. It's ridiculous.
Last word?
Well, I think the president, what makes American people like him is the fact that he is who he is. As your point to the decorum thing, no one is acting diplomatic, but the president has never pretended to be diplomatic. True. And that's why people respect him. They may not like him, but at least they know he is who he is. All the rest
genuine.
of these politicians
Can I just add something to that? Because most politicians say what you want them to hear.
Exactly.
And whether or not you like or dislike this president, he does not do that. And there's something about that I hope other politicians use that going forward, that they don't anticipate what the right answer is supposed to say, supposed to be rather, and just say that, but they say what they really, really mean and feel.
Because they listen to consultants. And the president doesn't care about consultants.
All right, we got to scoop, but we're coming back. Right after this, the Florida recounts are finally over. Democrats Bill Nelson and Andrew Gillum have conceded to Republicans Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, respectively. A top advisor to President Trump says this is testament to his influence. Whether this means that the president is a favorite in Florida in 2020, we'll talk about it. And some top Democrats refusing to fully endorse the results in Georgia as Republican Brian Kemp secures his victory over Democrat Stacey Abrams. We will examine the allegations. We'll examine the examinations and what the criticism says about faith in U.S. elections.
And clearly, he did everything he could to put his thumb on the scale and won that election, quote unquote, won that election.
Conceding yesterday to his GOP opponent, Governor Rick Scott. The statewide recount showed Scott with a 10,000-plus vote lead. This coming a day after Democratic Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum conceded the governor's race to former Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. Just hours after finishing the recount, Broward County Election Supervisor Brenda Snipes submitted her letter of resignation, ending a controversial 15-year career. Snipes' resignation is effective January 4th, likely putting the responsibility for picking her replacement in the hands of Governor-elect DeSantis. Here's White House counselor Kellyanne Conway earlier on the Trump factor in the Florida results.
I think that Governor Scott and Congressman DeSantis ran excellent campaigns, but this president getting in there several times in those last 6-7 days really made the difference. And also him encouraging them not to bail on their clear victories. And I think that people got another view of somebody like Brenda Snipes and her shenanigans, and that should be the first order of business for Governor DeSantis to really look at who's running these counties and this electoral process.
Whew, that's true. And Harris, you have some more news there you were just looking at, right?
Yeah,
oh, sorry, you set that down.
Remember, no, that's okay. You'll recall that there were actually 3 recounts in Florida, and we were just learning that the Republican has now conceded and called.
Heck.
Where is it that I have it here?
That's okay.
Caldwell
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
like
no,
that.
but this is an important seat, and that's what Kennedy and I were talking during that soundbite, that this is the agricultural commissioner, and now that's going to go to a Democrat.
Okay. So Lawrence, Florida is settled.
It's settled, but again, I'm not sure this. Okay, everybody is like, oh, she sent in her resignation. All right, they had the same problem before her as well. That person was fired by Jeb Bush for incompetence as well. So are we going to finally get someone in there that knows how to add, that knows how to not violate the Sunshine Law, that's not going to count illegal votes? Okay, so
do you want the job?
Absolutely not. I don't want to serve in any part of government because they just do bad stuff. You know, I don't want to curse, but they're just terrible at their job.
It's okay. Decorum's out the door.
Right, it's gone. It's gone.
Thank you.
That's the,
yes.
But my real problem right now that people aren't talking about is that although the election is cleaning up that race was still close. And these are socialist candidates that believe in socialism. They do. And they're getting more and more support. And it was funny at first when they couldn't win. All right. But that was a really close election. So I think this country is going more toward that way. At least the voters are.
So that is a really interesting point, because I did talk to some Floridians who had that same opinion and were sort of like, wow, you know, in terms of if you eat food or buy anything in a grocery store or pay rent or anything, or you pay any of your own bills, we dodged a bullet in Florida, because we could have gotten a socialist who was really going to make everything in the whole state more expensive for people who pay for themselves, not for millennials or not, you know, whoever else is.
So
I
why
wonder,
is that happening?
Well, no, I mean, are we getting closer to that in a lot of places? You don't think so?
They're not socialists. I mean, first of all, the ones like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is a Democrat socialist. Andrew Gillum was a Hillary Clinton delegate. He spoke actually quite beautifully about why he is a Democrat and not a Democrat socialist. I think using the term socialist, which now has such a negative connotation because people think Venezuela versus thinking about European countries. Yes, and we've definitely debated that before. Is really dangerous
and
not true.
Tax
yeah, but that's not
would
that's
raise
not
the price
what,
of everything for everyone in Florida.
I understand that, but I'm saying when people hear the word socialist, they don't think about a couple points raised in the corporate tax rate. They think about people in line for food and eating dogs.
Well,
and
that's because Democrat socialists have done such a horrible job of defining the word.
But Andrew Gillum hasn't, and people should really go and listen to him talk about who he is and his political beliefs.
Then let's take socialism out of it for a second, and let's talk about more obligation that the state will have to fund things that they can't afford. And that's what the problem is. You can screw around with names and pretend that that's the most important thing, but the bill is coming very soon, and we can't afford to pay it at the federal level. So if you are going to take a group of people who have sought shelter in the or the relatively economically free bastion of Florida and then further punish them with higher taxes with very little yield for them, it's confounding, and it's really frustrating. And it's no surprise that even though there may be more Democrat voters are leaning that way in the state of Florida, you still have these close races, because that alternative is bad news and it's immoral for everyone.
So the big question is, why is it happening in certain areas? We saw it in Arizona, where it's really more of a swing state than it ever has been.
It's Beto O'Rourke as well in Texas.
All right, meanwhile, in Georgia, Democrat Stacey Abrams admits she did not defeat Republican Brian Kemp in the race for governor, but she still refuses to call his state win legitimate as the governor-elect. Last week, Abrams threatened to sue the state for mismanaging the vote, and she is standing by that claim that rampant voter suppression tainted the results. Watch it.
He is the legal victor. But what you are looking for me to say is that there was no compromise of our democracy and that there should be some political compromise in the language I use. And that's not right. What's not right is saying that something was done properly when it was not. I will never deny the legal permature that says that he is in this position. And I pray for his success. But will I say that this election was not tainted, was not a disinvestment and a disenfranchisement of thousands of voters? I will not say that.
Democrats from outside Georgia have been weighing in, including former Attorney General Eric Holder, who tweeted, "Democracy did not win in Georgia." So a couple of things here. We did see this also with Governor Scott, who recused himself in Florida during the recount. Are we in a complicated position where people in their jobs overseeing elections should maybe recuse early on, even before the vote counts come in?
It's hard for me to say because it's always been this way. And I think we're putting too much power in these statewide secretaries of states, because it's definitely done at the county level. All he's doing is tallying up after all the counties have submitted their ballot. And it's easy to check at the end of the day, because they can say, hey, county, what did you... There's too much check due process as far as tallying the numbers for one state officer to control it. Now, I do think it's a legitimate argument to discuss the current laws of removing people off the voter rolls. If they want to have that discussion, but have it before the election, though.
So let's talk about the number. Oh, great. So we can get you and Kennedy to talk about the numbers. So the differential was a little bit more than 54,000 between these two opponents. The number that Democrats say were problematic for votes being counted was about 53,000 that Brian Kemp was somehow responsible for in terms of their legitimacy as votes. Kennedy?
Well, and the idea of using voter ID laws to somehow garner favor and have a higher probability of voters in your party, I don't I question that process. And you either have to have voter ID laws or you don't have to have them, but you have to have some means of legitimacy in these elections so people feel good about the results. And because a candidate didn't win doesn't mean that the contest is illegitimate. And we have to be very careful when we use that language. And it's not just about being ungracious and about being a sore loser. You know, you really can't call into question something like that without proof. And if Stacey Abrams wants to offer proof instead of saying, you know, this system is questionable and we need to change it, Lawrence is absolutely right. Have that conversation beforehand.
Or keep fighting. I mean, she made the decision over the weekend.
She's not entitled to the race because she feels like she deserves to be governor. That's not how elections are won.
But I mean, she conceded, she moved on, but she won't let anybody move on because she's focused on this one thing. So do you just keep fighting before you concede is also the question.
I think she fought as long as she could because, as she said, I mean, it's been legally certified that he won by 53,500 votes or whatever it is. But I think that she's bringing up legitimate issues where there are institutions all over the country being founded, like the one that Erica Holder runs, about voter suppression. In Georgia, there were 214 polling places that were shut down, mostly black and brown neighborhoods, 53,000 voter registrations on hold, 70% of those for African-American voters. You had lines 4 and 5 hours long. That happened in both black and white neighborhoods. You had missing power cords. These things shouldn't be happening in a modern democracy.
So you blame all of that on Brian Kemp?
No, I don't.
What I'm trying to understand,
The registration
where does she go with all of that?
Where she goes, she said she's going to take a nap and then she's going to think about running for another office.
She's going to launch a federal lawsuit.
Yeah, but that's not something that is only Stacey Abrams or makes her a sore loser. I've seen false comparisons with Martha McSally.
Yeah, we're just
only the president. Martha McSally conceded there was no question about how the voting went down in Arizona. This is a very different thing. And you know,
look at Kentucky,
Brian Kemp
where there
could
was
have
one
recused himself
vote
just so it didn't
between
look
the person who won and the person who lost, and you didn't see anything other than someone won and someone lost.
But it was a much
smaller. And I know every state is different, but the tone can be consistent.
Well, go to your county officials. Go to your county. Stop making this a statewide issue. You can easily get new county commissioners in there, and they can change the way
use
the
it or
election.
lose it should be removed because people should be able to show up to vote if they haven't voted in the last 10 years because there's a candidate that really excites them. I mean, you shouldn't be losing your voter registration.
Yeah, but a lot of states, and it's up to the states. I don't think this should be a federal mandate, and a lot of states have same-day voter registration.
It's a mess all over the place, though. I mean, we've all experienced it. I've experienced it here. When you walk in, it's a totally different experience where you go, and that's just not the way it should be. We should have more faith. It should be more uniform.
It should be more than one day.
Well, it certainly should. I don't know how progressive states like New York don't have early voting.
The battle over the House speakership is becoming a national campaign. Now some celebrities among those calling for Nancy Pelosi to take the gavel come January. Oh, the celebrities are in it, guys.
Yay, just like Taylor Swift.
One incoming House Democrat is now reportedly declining to say whether she will stick to her campaign vow to oppose Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. You think this pressure is big on Democrats right now?
Yeah.
I don't support Nancy Pelosi. I put out a commercial saying that I don't support Nancy Pelosi.
The battle over who will be the next House Speaker now turning into a national campaign. Even celebs weighing in. Oh, good.
What?
Singer Barbra Streisand and tennis champ Martina Navratilova throwing their support behind Nancy Pelosi. Mrs. Pelosi meeting with progressives in recent days to assure them that she would back their causes. And she has some powerful supporters.
All of us are leaders.
Yes.
And so, but we could only have one speaker at a time. Nancy Pelosi has simply been phenomenal.
But some Democrats, like Congresswoman-elect Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, saying that she won't support Pelosi.
I think that if we are going to turn a page and bring civility back to the political discussions, we need to change the people who are directing that conversation. And I, like Chrissy said, have tremendous respect for everything that Leader Pelosi's done. I think we're all sitting here in part because of the path that she has blazed for us. But I have been very, very clear and honest about my intentions.
There's no civility. All right, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge is one of Pelosi's potential challengers. She will announce her decision after Thanksgiving. In the meantime, some newly elected Democrats, like Mikey Sherrill and Andy Kim of New Jersey, campaigned saying that they would oppose Pelosi. They're now refusing to say how they're going to vote. Jessica, so people are going to keep a tally of everybody who said campaigned on I'm not going to vote for her, and then they got in, and if they vote for her, what happens?
Nothing.
No.
Especially if there's no one who actually runs against her. Marcia Fudge is clearly hedging here, trying to figure out if she will have enough people at least to block Pelosi's win. But I think there will be a number of Republicans, and not for the reason of, oh, you know, we just want her in our attack ads forever, who will step across the aisle and vote for her because they've worked with her for decades. They have respect for her. There are a lot of Republicans who talk about, you know, what a fierce and qualified leader she has been, and don't want to see her brought down by, you know, 20 or so rogue Democrats in this. And I think the argument for her losing the speakership would have been a lot stronger if Democrats hadn't done as well in the midterm elections. She really did prove her worth there.
Okay. Let's listen to one of those Democrats who said that they would oppose her. No? Nancy Pelosi.
It's not me.
What?
What happened? Okay. Anyhow.
I don't know.
I think time and again, Assemblyman Weber has attempted to deceive the voters here in New Jersey. He has said numerous times that I support Nancy Pelosi. I don't support Nancy Pelosi. I put out a commercial saying that I don't support Nancy Pelosi.
Is that going to be dicey if she supports Nancy Pelosi?
It should be. I mean, I agree with Jessica. Like, unfortunately, it's not anymore because someone just, you know, sits with their PR team and comes up with a good counter phrase like, well, having pondered all the evidence, I really don't want my soul crushed by this icy vampiress. But, you know, no one's going to be very honest and say all that. I hope Marcia Fudge runs. I really do. Because you know what? And you should too. Because it's much easier for the American people to get behind the president when he opposes Nancy Pelosi because people just don't like her. It's not misogynistic. She's just a not very likable person.
Well, along those lines, the president did say, I heard him earlier today, she's great. She should be in charge.
She's polarizing.
You know, he's like, I could get her some votes, I believe he said earlier. But see, I actually think not only would she be great as, you know, the villain they can hold up in the next election, blah, blah, blah. I also think that she likes to wheel and deal just like the president does. And maybe somebody's going to get something done if she's there. Am I crazy?
Well, they're going to get a lot of spending done, a lot of infrastructure bills and things like that. But let me push back on this new progressive caucus, because I actually have a lot of respect for them, even though I disagree with their ideology. They actually believe, the majority of them believe what they believe. When I mean that, it's like the Freedom Caucus of the world. What they're going to learn is it's not so much about this vote, it's about the procedure vote and what they can get done to stop and delay some of this stuff from going on the floor. Right now, they're young and they're fresh, and they think it's about this speakership. What they're going to learn is that it's not about that, and they're going to be able to delay. You'll see, I guarantee you, they're going to be on the same side of the Freedom Caucus on a lot of these issues, because both of them are fighting for the heart and soul of their ideologies.
So interesting.
And that's what a group of Republicans is trying to make.
Nancy Pelosi is doing the one thing that she does so well right now. What's she doing, Jessica? She's vote counting.
Oh, I was going to say,
and everybody knows that when she comes to your door and she says, how are you going to vote? You're going to vote for me? Remember what I did? She's personally going to whip. And she does that really, really well. It's hard to run against that. Marcia Fudge has talked about all the support that she has gotten, but can you count votes? Can you go to door to door, and can you scoop up votes and then go to the floor and know that you've got them based on those conversations? That takes years to build up. It may be one of the reasons why she and the president could get something done. Yeah. But who knows? We'll just have to watch it play. It does feel a little disingenuous for the party of women to not support other women who might run against the one woman. Like it should be for all women, all opportunities.
You should also be able to vote on the House floor for the speaker you want and not the person that you committed to in secret in your caucus vote.
If someone else would run, though. But at this point,
we don't know.
No one's standing up there.
All right, most of the 2020 talk has been about possible Democratic challengers, but one Trump critic says Republicans need to challenge the president in the GOP primaries. Whether he has a point, we will debate.
The Trump critic says Republicans need to be reminded about what it means to be conservative and decent. Flake also saying he doesn't think he will be the person to challenge the president in the GOP primary, but he did float some other names. Listen.
I'd love to see Ben Sass. Not speaking for him, obviously, I'd love to see Ben run. John Kasich has put some things in motion. I think there will be somebody. There needs to be somebody. And I've been to New Hampshire a few times. It's a great place to be in the fall. Not sure about the winter time, but anyway, somebody needs to run. Somebody needs to run.
I love Jake Tapper. Yeah. He doesn't even break, and the guy told like 4 jokes. I mean, he just is sitting there. Where does he fit into the Republican Party, Jeff Flake?
Nowhere. He couldn't even win his own state. So, bye-bye.
And he couldn't even win his own primary in his own state.
Can't even win it. And for this notion of, and look, I have my criticism of the president. I'm a libertarian. I'm on the libertarian side of the wing. And there's a lot of stuff he does that I disagree with. But again, we've already had this fight in the primary in 2016. Some of our best conservative heroes were on that stage, and he filleted all of them. So why would you do this again? You know who's happy about this? Donald Trump. There's nothing more that he enjoys than being on the road campaigning. If you want to fire him up for a general election, put him on the road.
But do you think it's a healthy thing, though? I mean, there are definitely, like you say, you're from the libertarian wing. There are a lot of people who do have disagreements with him. So to see that showcased, maybe that is good for democracy in the Republic. But
I don't know. I mean, I would say that it was interesting, the interview that the president did with Chris Wallace. I thought one of the most telling moments was when he said, you know, he was talking to him about tone and this and that, and he said, I'd like to have a nicer tone, but you can't in this town, and you can't win. And I truly believe that you cannot win with a decent tone any longer on any side, that you have to be that in everyone's face. I would like to see the nice kid. I mean, that's what Jeff Flake's talking about. He's like, I want to be quiet like this and win. I'm like, you can't win like that. Those people aren't winning. You know, you don't get the attention. No one's going to vote for you. You're not. Maybe we want a fighter as our national chief.
I'm not sure if we saw that play out, at least on the Democrat side in the primaries. And obviously, we have very different candidates.
Well, there you go.
So hopefully, we can have a more decorum-filled 2020. But what do you think of this? Do you think someone will challenge him, or?
I wouldn't be surprised, but they're going to challenge him for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. And it could be, you know, it's going to be, there's no such thing as, on a national level, a John Kasich Republican. And I've said the same thing, like, there's no such thing as an Avenatti Democrat. Right. I think Joe Biden would probably be the best hope of combating the president with the sort of strength that is necessary. But if you can couple that with, I'm a good person, but I'll fight when I have to.
Right.
And that's the tone that someone has to take that no one has figured out with this president. They think you have to immediately go in the gutter. And, you know, I look at Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton, and that's what they have done over and over and over again. And that's what the president wants you to do.
Joe Biden wants to go fight behind the barn. I mean, you're picking the person that's most like Trump.
But people still think he is a good person. That's the point that Kennedy's making that I think is important there. No one thinks that, I don't want to say no one because I know that my Twitter feed is probably full of people who think Joe Biden's a bad person. But overall, he has very high approvals on both sides. There are people who think he's a good moral person.
But Jeff Flake, just back to him quickly, I think that he's got some really good ideas, and I appreciate some of the things that he's written, but he has turned into one of these professional victims, and I really have no respect for that. Whether it's Nancy Pelosi or a sitting U.S. senator, stop complaining about where you are and how someone else has done you wrong, because that is the going narrative in this country right now.
We can't have a victim president. It doesn't work.
So, and again, it comes back to the question then, what role does Jeff Flake play in the Republican Party? Is he somebody that really could legitimately run? Because I understand what you're saying. Maybe it's the nice guy component. He could win. But there are Republicans out there who can't figure out who he is on a day-to-day basis. You know, how do you caucus with this guy?
He'll be our comedian because no one takes him seriously. And I find it hard to take him even more seriously of him being this big conservative hero when I've seen his votes. Okay?
No, he votes with the president.
Wait a minute.
But it's the getting there that some Republicans question.
I'm saying over his political career, he has not been the most conservative senator. And so for him to take this Rand Paul approach, or he's going to be a Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or a Mike Lee, sorry, dude, most of us know who you are. You just don't like the president, and it's personal for you. You even said it. Hey, if I was running for election, I couldn't have voted the way I did. I couldn't have objected to the Supreme Court Kavanaugh during that time. So he's still a politician. He's just a politician that just can't get reelected.
Politician forever and ever, and now we move on. The president saying tomorrow we will get a full intelligence report on the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Big questions looming now on whether or not the administration will punish the Saudi government and what the right approach is. We'll debate it next.
A month ago, you said you had spoken with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and that he had told you directly that he had no knowledge of this.
That's right. And still says that.
Fox News Sunday, saying he had declined to listen to the recording capturing part of the killing of Khashoggi. Trump says he's spoken with CIA Director Gina Haspel about the agency's findings on Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's involvement, and that a full report would be coming as soon as tomorrow. This after the Washington Post reported the CIA had determined with high confidence that the Saudi Crown Prince ordered that killing. Chris Wallace asking President Trump about this. Watch.
What if the Crown Prince, speaking to you, the President of the United States, directly lied to you about
Well, he told me that he had nothing to do with it.
Do you just live with it because you need him?
Well, will anybody really know? All right, will anybody really know? But he did have certainly people that were reasonably close to him that were probably involved. You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
But Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul remain skeptical and have some pretty harsh words for the Crown Prince.
He's irrational, he's unhinged, and I think he's done a lot of damage to the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia, and I have no intention of working with him ever again.
I think they will see sanctions as weakness on the part of the president, and if the president wants to act strongly, he should cut off the arms sale.
Amen. At least one prominent Democrat, former Congresswoman Jane Harman, calling out the Saudi royal family. Jane?
Saudi Arabia has an option. MBS does not have to be the Crown Prince. There are, it's a huge royal family. Maybe King Salman could figure out that for the moment this man has disqualified himself.
I don't know how you disqualify yourself from your birthright to the monarchy. So what do we do here? Because the president is still skeptical about the findings, and you have these Republican senators who are skeptical about Saudi Arabia as a whole.
So here's the deal. I agree with Rand because Rand is consistent when it comes to his foreign policy. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with Lindsey Graham because we want to pick and choose which type of dictators we want to deal with. And so I think it becomes problematic when we start, deciding, oh, I like this guy, but I'll allow this. I'll allow people that punish gays and, punish women, but actually I don't like them killing journalists.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's the problematic one. I think the president is being honest because he's essentially saying, actually, I may let it go because on the scale of things, it's not that important to me. Yeah. He's the first honest one to say that, though.
That's true. And I also think, I think the damage is done, too. There has been a lot of damage between the U.S. and Saudi relationship as a result of this. We've seen a lot of things canceled. I think that it leads to an overall feeling of total distrust. They're angry with the president. He's angry with them. It's not like nothing's happening as a result of this.
But is there enough happening? It may not be nothing, but is it enough to really change the balance of the relationship and send Saudi Arabia finally a strong message that this is not acceptable?
No, I don't think they're on the receiving end of that message, no matter what. They're like, we are running our country the way that we want to.
Yeah, but they need access to our markets, don't they?
They do, absolutely. And I think the question becomes whether, because of how brazen this was, so Saudi Arabia has been doing terrible things since the creation of Saudi Arabia. This is how they do things. They hurt women, punish gays, do whatever they want. But it's another level to do this to an American green card holder journalist in the Turkish consulate. And we haven't seen anything like that before. And that's a Putin level move, right? Vladimir Putin kills European and American, European citizens or Russians he doesn't like. They're on European territory, does it in Washington, D.C., puts it in our face in a different way that Saudi, I feel like, had kind of regulated it inside. And if this is a new stage, whether that's brought on by him feeling emboldened because of his relationship with Jared Kushner or not, I'm not sure there. But I think there does need to be some sort of reaction to say, at least if we're going to continue being allies,
so what do you do? Do you cut off the arms deal?
I think you certainly have to explore that option. The sanctions, Europe just sanctioned the 18. We've sanctioned the 18. I think it's 17 or 18 that have been.
So what do we do with China then? And all the rest
we
of
do
the
a lot
countries.
more with China than we have been, but I mean.
The problem is, where do we draw the line? Is there a line? There's never going to be.
No, there's always moral equivalence.
There's always,
depending on what we get out of the relationship.
Exactly.
Is that acceptable?
I'm not saying it's acceptable, but that's what we've been
Isn't
doing.
this special circumstance, though, because it is, does